Vice Chair and President of our future AATC Campus East, Dr. Kurt Hurst.
So most of my focus in Northern Virginia is, one, meeting the right people. I think it came up earlier, it was even mentioned on the phone. If we can't get data centers to say, you're solving my problem, I am willing to either invest in apprenticeships, or I'm willing to invest in education. I don't know how we win in that part of the country, because they have infinite resources, yet they're saying they don't have enough. So,
well, the question is, what problem are we trying to solve?
What I hear in Loudoun County is that they can't hire enough seasoned operators. But part of what doesn't make sense to me, so that must not be costing them much money, because otherwise it should be very easy for us to bring people in. I'm going to just pick a number. They should be willing to spend $2,000 to put people through, maybe even spend $1,000 to put potential candidates through. And what I've started to talk about with a few is that if you use the MAPS process, ex-military would be the right place to start. Say, what do they have now? What do they know? What do they have now? What does it take to go from their current situation to meeting the needs of a data center, even if it's entry level? And then can we continue to help take that person to the step that they're comfortable with them working? So I'm trying to get to the Colos, the Googles, to find out how are they solving the problems. And some of my perspective comes from the utility industry, because I've heard for 40 years that when the baby boomers retire, they don't think the plants will keep running. Quite frankly, it was BS. Now they've made it tougher for middle management because they have to spend more time developing people, but our plants keep running. So I think we've got to figure out what inexperience or lack of education is costing these companies. And I've not seen data on that. I'd love to find it. Because if we can say, here's what it's costing you, you know, the old proverbial, it takes 1 year's salary to hire an employee. I don't think the CFOs buy that, because if they did, they would spend a ton of money educating people. But that's what I'm trying to work through. The one group that I'm building a relationship with, many probably heard of Buddy Reiser. He's one of the influential people in Loudoun County. Did finally follow up with me, so keep talking.
That's good.
Their goal is to try and have people in Loudoun County stay in Loudoun County. I know from some of my experience in dealing with Amazon, all the Amazon employees were coming from the West Coast because they knew them, they knew their training, they knew their background. What he's saying is we ought to be able to have people from Loudoun County going into these roles. So how do they develop them? That's part of the goal of the Workforce Development Task Force. They're trying to work in the high schools, which is very difficult, getting the kids interested and getting the parents interested. And I think you even knew the data. Some of the curriculum is actually being used by Northern Virginia Community College. So if they have 20 students, that's probably stretching it. 10 of them, if they apply themselves the first year of the program, can actually get a job to go to work. So what Loudoun County needs to do is get that 10 to 20 up to 100, because it looks like any of them that apply themselves can go to work. So it's getting people to understand. It's the same issue that we see around the country. A general bachelor's degree more important than a mission critical operator certification. A lot of people are saying that certification gets people to start going to work and they can go on. The parents are saying no. You got to get your bachelor's degree, you got to get through college. It's the age old, you got to have a 4-year degree to do anything. Yet the data centers will say a 4-year degree doesn't do any good unless you're a data scientist, which means they're probably going to go straight to Seattle or California for much bigger jobs than what the data centers need. So it's that dichotomy of what you need to run a data center versus what the education system is set up to do. I think we fill that role. In Northern Virginia, I want to try to find a way to get our name out there as a solution. And the curriculum is already being used.
Yes.
We just don't have enough students.
So now we'll take that segue into California and introduce Dr. Brismayet is our president for our Future Campus West with your update, sir. Thank you.
My update is that I seem to be supporting your requirements for the East Coast already for the West Coast. But I found a candidate facility that we may be able to engage in. Hopefully, the gentleman will, whether their chief revenue officer from England may show up to get to know Tim and discuss the possibilities of that kind of an arrangement. The name of the company is XCool, EXCOOL, and it is a very well established. And Brian Klebish, I thought he was. Anyway, let's see here. They have many successful installations in Europe, especially at Digital Realty Trust data centers. Also have some in the United States, and they've decided to move to the States from Europe and start up their own operations here, including manufacturing and testing and services. And that site happens to be very close to Greer, South Carolina, and an excellent location for Tim to become engaged there as a resident in that laboratory, and taking up some office space, and then moving into the laboratories as a facility where we can show some of our ideas about Dr. Richard's cooling systems, about Server Dome, other models that we want to take to the industry for edge computing. And hopefully, they're engaged right now. They're developing or building out the building to their needs. They should be finished in April, and hopefully we'll find an arrangement to where we can come in and start up an operation there, have a headquarters there, and turn it into something that's beneficial to both parties.
So wonderful news. So I expect that you would want Dr. Kurt to reciprocate and find a building in California.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Tim, is everyone aware of what Hannah Armstrong is looking for?
Not everybody. So this would probably be a good, appropriate time to
So
do that up.
I don't know how many of you know of Hannah Armstrong. They're a climate change infrastructure investment firm. They're looking for opportunity to deploy money, return on investment for their investors on anything that's going to help with climate change. About 50% of their investments are behind the meter. The old, let's go into a building, improve the efficiency, the savings ends up paying back the investors, and in the end, the building is more efficient, more sustainable. They also have about 25% of their investments are more typical infrastructure, off-site solar. They do some work for the military, and then another 25% kind of fall into that. How can they get good return on investment related to infrastructure? So the question is, if you have, I'll use this as an example, a data center that's tremendously inefficient or has the potential to become much more sustainable, that is a place where Hannah Armstrong would like to invest money.
Is that the name of the company?
Yeah, it's an investment firm based in Annapolis, Maryland.
What is it?
Hannon Armstrong.
Hannah?
Hannon.
Hannon, and then Armstrong, like the astronaut.
And Dr. Kurt and I had a face-to-face with them last month.
What he's made clear to us, and we're trying to find a way around it, he is not necessarily willing to invest in technology, but I think if we could find an opportunity where we could significantly improve an existing data center, X dollars today, it's dropped down to some other amount, and there's a delta that can go into return on investment, they would be interested in that, both behind the meter or in front of the meter.
Arizona's close too.
They'll invest anywhere in the country. I don't know about the world, but
So are they working with any utilities to offer that financing? I know that some of the commodities brokers offer a very similar program and financing for it, especially around Baltimore and that area.
I think they've had some involvement in Virginia's push for solar, but that's not done.
And there are several other financing companies that are in the same boat, offering the same sorts of financing for the same sort of project.
And even Bob, who we met, realizes if you've got a solid efficiency project, money will not be an issue. There's money out there.
So I remember years ago, Sun Microsystems, where they had data centers scattered all over the countryside, and they did the big consolidation. And as part of their capital program, they had funds made available to upgrade the technology because they had some really old legacy equipment that highly inefficient. And they were actually able to drop their overall power consumption for all the data processing. So you think they would?
That's what they want. That's what they're looking for.
So can we talk to them about maybe setting up a structure to do specifically that and go out and market it?
I'm certainly willing to talk to him. I think what he wants is for us to bring projects and say, here's the capital costs, here's the savings, here's how we think the ROI works.
All right, but to market it though, to get people interested, say, here's the program that we have. Okay, and these are the parameters that we expect you to be in. You give that to somebody, they have a hard copy, they have a concept, they can evaluate whether it's going to fit into their organization or not. And I think it becomes a much easier sell. And it's something that, you know, we can certainly promote and profit by. I think JFS would be the one to do that.
And I believe that's how we presented. So made them aware of the university, but really the contracting, negotiating arm, and our strategic alliance contract with Serverdome, that we're not really pushing a data center per se, but a sustainable, efficient process.
Right.
And that, I think that dovetails more into what they're trying to do in being green. Which again, I think that's something that you and I have been talking about as well.
So my understanding of Ken and Armstrong in the past has been that they invest only through special purpose vehicles into project development specifically. I think.
New project development, you're saying?
It doesn't have to be new. It can be a renovation, rehabilitation, upscale, upgrade,
Right.
upleveling, right? But it is through a specific instrument in the tax code, special purpose vehicle, SPV, specifically dedicated to a project.
They do both, as I understand.
Okay, good.
Because term's not going to come to the front of mind right now, but you can actually, like a house in a lot of states, you can upgrade the energy consuming portions of that house and put it into the tax base. They have done that. But they also are doing things where they say, I've got a chiller that uses 500 kW, I put a new one in, it uses 250, they take the delta, pay somebody.
Are we still on my update?
We can bring the floor back to you. Thank you for,
Sorry
for
about
the-
that.
It's okay. I had to
rabbit
I had to
trail
finish
that
that
we had.
email anyway. So. No, otherwise, from free, at least in the beginning, to my other opportunities that I was working on, for the $10 million that you were going to give me after I gave you 12. I'm not very seriously or aggressively pursuing any specific opportunity, but am in conversation with a data center in Oregon that I think would be a great candidate to move into, but I just got to find another partner who's got enough money to seriously consider a co-location operation there. And if I've got somebody who's interested in a co-location operation, we might be able to backfill and take up some of that space and develop a laboratory for ourselves there. I've just got to find myself in the middle of a deal that makes sense for two other parties to carry us along with until I've got $10 million.
Is there a site survey plan?
Well, they've got plans. Everything looks very good already. It's just money. That's it.
Okay, my checkbook.
Thank you.
Well,
But that's why I have some other things going on too, but not about the campus.
if you're yielding the floor, I will turn it over to
Well, yeah, we do have a conference we're going at to next week
Yes.
to Brian Klabesh. I know he's after me for it. To his cap rate camp, deal in San Francisco, where we're going to have, I'm going to moderate, and you're going to be a panelist to talk about edge computing and actually data center and infrastructure strategy for edge computing. And we'd like to know what you'd like to get out of it.
Well, I certainly would think that our exposure a little bit, I know we can't necessarily be the entire marketing arm at everyone's conference or panel, but certainly some plugs for what we're doing and how we're addressing that. We're supposed to have a call with them tomorrow or Friday, I believe, Friday morning, to go over the mechanics of that.
But that's just the,
Yeah, so but with Capray themselves, they've made it known that they're one of 4 or 5 different industry associations that want to affiliate partner with us being their education arm.
Right. Okay. And Serverdome, will you be speaking on behalf of Serverdome?
As a board member, I can, but I believe that Bruce would be there anyway, Bruce Brady.
He is going to be there? He should have been on the panel too. Okay, good. And by the way, somebody will be there from X-Cool. It won't be the leader that's coming over from England, but
Is that Scott?
Scott, right?
Yeah, he registered with us yesterday.
Oh, he did?
Or Steve Dobson.
Steve Dobson.
Mhm.
So he's coming here tomorrow
Yes,
instead of to, I think he's going to go to the cap rate function too. So.
he's North America Business Development.
Right, that's right.
Excellent. So we're going to turn it over to Mr. Moneybags over there, Dr. Tim, who knows how to get money for us.
20 million, all right.
I'll bring the phone down to you.
Speaking of that, I do want to just address a couple of issues. The first one is in regards to the university. I pulled some numbers a little bit based upon what Tim kind of gave me some parameters. We're looking at I broke it down into students, the number of students. So 100, 500, 1,000. This is something what we.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to get too granular. This is like the 10,000 foot level, but at least to get some ideas here.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to make a big over 10,000 foot, 30,000 foot general comment. With 100 students, the projected revenue would be about close to 5 million. At 500 students, we're at 24 million. And this is gross revenue. And at 1,000, once we reach that, we're at 48 million. So basically a $50 million university. Some of you may or may not know this, but this university right here generates over $1 billion a year. And that is just from tuition. That is not from any of the ancillary dorms and the athletics and all that. So that's one, just kind of where we're heading with this from a financial standpoint. That not only are we helping a lot of people and businesses across our country, we, from a financial standpoint, will be sustainable. The other area that, any questions in regards to that?
Do you have any estimate of, what it's going to cost to get to those dollars
So
or a range?
not all the expenses. What it'll take is it takes the numbers 100,
Right.
500,000 students. Based upon some numbers that Tim gave me, white label versus non-white label, where the non-white allows a student to come in through the website, click on it, and they're taken off to another site, and it doesn't, they leave our site.
Yeah.
that revenue is generated less, it generates less revenue than if we white label it.
Right.
So we're looking at, I don't have all these, I don't have this all built out.
Okay.
So expenses, and there's other expenses. So I don't know what the net is. This is the gross revenue. But it is a substantial amount to be sustainable compared to an online course once it's going.
It's great.
I have an online course, a pickleball course.
Oh,
And-
really?
And it's worldwide. And
Is that the official sport of AATC?
Yeah. Sport of A.
Well, I have a whole group of people that give me the site because I
Yeah,
know a bunch of people that want it.
But that'll be white labeled through AATC.
Let's do it.
My margins are so, but once we get this going online, I've talked to my two boys, they're 25 and 23, and they're not into this field. One's an intro auditor with Charles Schwab. This online way that we're going, this is the deliverable for the future. Absolutely. So we're heading in the right direction. So I just wanted to give you that a brief summary as to the numbers.
Those are annual numbers,
And
and you would assume as long as you maintain 100, that would be ongoing annual. So if you maintain 100 students, that would be that number each year.
that's right. Yep. So paying new students, paying every year. They pay once for the course, the total, couple grand, 25 mid 2000s. They pay for the coursework. That's how the numbers are originated. So that's all through, well, I don't know if there's been a final agreement or not yet.
There's some, the agreement's in play, just getting it operational with the internal linkages for the students to go and make sure we don't have any hiccups, like, I couldn't even get our Zoom to start on time today. So, but if we get that going and it's consistent and there's no issues per se, then absolutely.
There's a step at a time.
Right.
Building it, just like what's mentioned, build, and then the certification, or then the degree, the diplomas, and all that comes. Right. now,
Yes.
Getting it accessible online and starting to generate some kind of revenue, and we'll have some momentum.
So perfect way to introduce. Thank you for that.
Wait, one more,
One more.
please. So in regards to the financial, so we're talking about sustainability for the data centers. So a facility, the infrastructure, the protection of such data. But what is not, and when we went to New York, what I was on the panel to discuss there was the way to help protect the businesses from the financial risk that is there as well. And the financial risk I have found is not being discussed. Now, all the infrastructure, all the parts, the nuts and the bolts and all that, and the edging, all that is being discussed. But what happens when power goes down and now there's a contract to take care of my data and now your center can't do it? And there's a financial loss to that. It may be employees having the business. My business, I now have to send employees over. I have to do some extra things financially that I hadn't budgeted or counted on. So there's the risk. How do we mitigate that risk? So the tool, one very powerful tool, I kind of call it the golden egg, that our government has given small, actually every size business in our country. I have specialized in the small to medium sized. That means the Fortune 500s, I didn't specialize in those. Less than that, yes. And that is the use of a captive insurance company. And at some point we can grow. So we talked about 4,000 to 5,000, whatever that premium is on an annual basis. The university can own its own captive insurance company, pay the premiums to the captive insurance company, be insured, except that money that is being paid isn't going to Hartford Insurance Company, where there is no return on the investment other than coverage in the event of a loss. But when you have your own captive insurance company, you mitigate those risks with your own funds. And you then can have access to those funds after a year. So the tax laws and the government, the legislation have given us small to medium-sized business owners this tool called a captive insurance company, a special area of the tax code that I specialize in that could be utilized as a way to, as a possible consideration to help mitigate some of the financial risk to these companies that we're going to be touching or are touching or will be touching. So that was the only other thing.
You would still, so you wouldn't have primary insurance, but you have back secondary insurance.
So that's a great question. This doesn't replace like workers' comp, that type of traditional insurance. So a company has to have that. This would replace like, errors and omissions, it can, directors and liability insurance, it could replace that.
Because the way I understood it, this is more the big guys. They're willing, because of the number of facilities they have, to take risk because they can, and then they buy reinsurance. That was the right term.
Yeah.
They buy a policy that says it goes over X.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we would want to protect ourselves so that, in theory, whatever pool you create, if you had to pay it all out, you wouldn't go negative as a corporation.
So this is reinsurance, only that company would own the insurance company. And they're paying their premiums to that insurance company. So let's say they had a form of traditional insurance that covers something. They're paying the traditional insurance company at the end of the year. Do they get anything back? They don't have a claim. Let's just assume they don't have a claim. Do they get anything back? No. No, they don't. They have an expense, but they get nothing back. So they pay a $10,000 premium or $20,000 premium or $50,000 premium annually for X coverage. If they have their own insurance company, they pay that insurance company X premium, have the same amount of coverage, but at the end of the year, X amount of, not 100% of it, but 90% of it is then accessible back to them that they can pull out of their insurance company and use it for R&D, anything they want, anything they want. There are legal parameters, there's tax code parameters that need to be followed, and I do that. We manage it. There's different companies across the country that form these. Most companies like to go offshore and form them offshore. So there is a way to have it look like it's offshore, have the same protections that an offshore corporation has, but it's onshore. And from a sovereign nation. And there's protection and privacy all built into it, and it's very, very inexpensive to form and to operate on an ongoing basis.
So Dr. Tim, would this be something that we could establish as a standing committee meeting to discuss these things if I were to move that forward as a motion? Because we all, I think everyone in this room have to know a little bit about the finances of the organization as we're moving the train forward. And since we're doing monthly and quarterlies, we're coming up on our quarterly, that's a little more expansive for us as a group to discuss. So two things would be, one, getting more granular on what those deliveries are for our numbers of students and what our expenses are, which we're going to be kind of having an ebb and flow with Randy, because we're going to start to discern, the spatial requirements for the university at the various respective campuses, and then how much, dollars is he going to get as a budget to work with, and those kinds of things based on our trending, based on the number of students enrolling, and then of course our sponsorships, our partnerships, conferences and things that we can obtain funds from. So, but I think in keeping in pace with what we have to do here today, I would like to put a motion ahead that we establish a standing section of our board meeting that covers finance. And it could be, as much as an hour of it, I think.
I'll second.
All right. Anybody in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Anybody opposed? Everybody loves talking about money, Tim.
Then I'll share with you the self-storage model. That's right. I'm not sure I know 100% what we're talking about, but we did the same thing. We said, let's quit paying an insurance company. Let's take the risk ourselves, which was pretty low. But it was a risk.
This isn't, we'll move on, but this isn't your own, the company owns their own insurance company. It's not self-insurance. And sometimes that's mixed up. Self-insurance, you don't get tax benefits, it's not reinsurance, it's night and day. I don't do self-insurance.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've been formatting this in a very much of a pickleball scenario. So now back to you, Dr. Randy, on this side of the table.
Well, I guess in listening to everything, I'm looking obviously the architectural perspective, so I'm thinking of the facilities and the way we can grow. I know your goal is try to get physical operation, facilities where you get people to come in and train. One of the things we're starting to do in the company, and I'm getting more interested in virtual reality and actually building an environment inside a 3D model and a computer to really have someone actually put on a set of goggles and actually walk through a facility. And one of the things that's kind of been popping in my mind after listening to Dr. Dennis present with his thought of creating this database for the actual incidents that have occurred, is that if you had an actual virtual campus almost that was built with all these kind of possibilities of incidents. So one training session might be something on the electrical grid going down, or shortage in a mechanical unit goes out. How does the student respond? How do they use the virtual environment to go in and change that? So I guess in thinking that through, that's one thing that kind of comes to mind, is that, has there any consideration for that, or does that seem like it'd be something that would be worth?
Yeah, I think we've had some discussions with it. I did a reach out to a gentleman who was interested in Aatc. He was in the data center arena, had a battery company, actually did some of the Vantage data centers in California. Anthony Rogers, I don't know if anybody knows him, but he's gone totally into that whole space. And but there's other, like you said, there's other companies like that. But if we're going to make it exciting for our students that are millennials primarily that we're targeting to get involved in what we do and think it's cool, I think that's certainly probably one of the pillars that we should be pushing way out in front.
And I can see, like you said, a lot of the millennials or the younger kids, like my niece, who's kind of starting into college, her mind's focused. They grew up on technology and tablets and computers and everything, and they know how to do it. They know exactly how to operate things. I've got a 5-year-old nephew that can operate tablet, computer, and be able to,
at a very young age.
So anyway, that was just some of the thoughts that I was thinking as far as the development, and then also, keep in mind of the coursework, maybe just thinking of actual facilities, going back and doing retrofits and sustainability, looking at ways to actually take the existing facility that a company may have that's 10 years old, what can be done from an architectural or facility standpoint to bring in, whether it's solar power, change reflectivity coatings on the roof, doing things, glazing, things like that that might help to, offer value to someone that would say, hey, you can come here and make these changes from a facility standpoint and reduce.
Yeah, one of the discussions that we were having with the East Campus was having a server dome configuration, but a mock-up of it. And then you enter in that virtualization. So we're saving the cost on the physical construction of not really having a data center per se, but the environment of a data center that can be virtualized. And then the students can learn from that. I'm not sure what the status is, Dr. Darrell, on Indiana, if it's a greenfield build or is it an existing brownfield tenant improvement?
Right now, the state of Indiana is looking for over 100 acres from the campus.
Okay, so it'll be a brand new brown or greenfield. Excellent. So, so there'll be different configurations, and then Dr. Bruce, you have the one up in Oregon. Is that an existing building?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So
an
we,
existing data center.
there's an entire spectrum of options here that we can look into and delve into. So, and then I don't know if you wanted to speak to, I think you have reciprocal licensure in different states, and you're also looking into some of the areas that we're discussing now. And I don't know if we wanted to make that a task item on our agenda for a certain period of time, or kind of wait to hear how the finances are coming, so it's kind of a catch-22 on that. But all of this, I mean, does anyone else have a comment about, the buildings, the concepts? This is really the early stages of what you would call a charrette process, right? Where we start dreaming about what we like. I personally would like to have a recording studio, video fireside chats that we can do with each other, with students. The OEMs can come in and talk about their wares and talk about programs and things like that. And, and I still have a voice for radio or a face for radio or something like that.
Well,
program.
I think it's that, historically, everybody has thought that this is too expensive. There is no return on it. There's change in thought processes out there now. The 3D modeling has become a lot less expensive. The value have been documented in cost savings of doing things right the first time rather than over and over again out in the field. I know just my own experience in working with the early stages of BIM, the number of catches that you find on the drawing board before it gets out to the field, tremendous cost savings. You don't catch them all, but you'll catch 99% of them. The 3D is really taking off in the past 2-3 years. The technology has gotten a lot cheaper. And I think in talking to people, there's still the mindset that it's expensive. And if we do the research and we can demonstrate the lower cost and the greater value, we'll have something.
And you're walking away with, you start doing 3D, you walk away with giving potential client or operator a 3D model with all the systems built in that they can start monitoring and tracking.
Well, the big operators, the hyperscalers are demanding it now. Because it goes directly into their operating procedures, and they put all the information out to the tablets. So when the guy is walking around, he goes to a piece of equipment. He has all that equipment specs, parts, components, operational procedures at his fingertips. And a lot of these programs are being well developed. They're just not prolific in the marketplace yet.
And some of those proficiencies, that those hyperscalers are requiring of those contractors now, if they don't learn from their previous build mistake and they continue to have, they're off the job. They'll get somebody else done. So it's really important to really facilitate this training.
At the same time, you look at AR, VR, you looked at digital twinning at all?
What is it?
Digital twinning? So digital twinning is real-time 3D modeling of a facility in such a way you activate an entire facility in a model. So Google is looking at this right now. They're testing future facilities, which does both CFD modeling as well as AR, VR, as well as digital twinning. Digital twinning is one of the things I would say is I would hope that when you take on courseware development, you really look at things that are digitally transformative, because that's where the big bang is. The big bang isn't in training somebody how to take a wrench to a chiller.
I mean, I think what you said is really, really great, and it's the way the future is going to be. But I think for our training, it's a great opportunity. I've talked to future facilities. They're not quite there yet. They're interested. I've talked to a couple other brands out there. They all want to do it. ABB being one of them. I talked to most recently. And yeah, it's going to get there. But a lot of the industry also has to buy in because of the cost of recreating the digital input for a Vertiv crack versus a data air crack versus, you know, some other crack. You know, they have to start providing that data, you know, to the industry, okay, from the manufacturer on out, to make things much more efficient. And it's, you know, the more efficient we get, the more the cost is going to come down. And if we're able then to create coursework where we have this digital data center out there and we create a couple lessons plans and have the students react to it, we're teaching them the processes. I think if we're the first to the gate, we'll be extremely successful.
I think we take it one step further and, you know, make the dialogue with, and I did put it up on the site, but like with NASA, with the new Space Command, that is a new component of our military. You know, Virgin Galactic can take our students up and start doing our wares up on the moon. And I mean, this is down the road. I know we're trying to get things.
You just want a trip to the moon, and we know that.
I know. But anyway, so good segue, good segue in, and I was going to call on you next, Bruce, to share what you and I have been discussing and our strategic alliance going forward. Thank you, Rand.
So the real focus of Smart Nations, so this has been my salsa now for a couple of years, that if we in the wealthy, developed Western world do not take on a responsibility of helping the emerging, developing nations with their digital infrastructure, they're going to get completely left out of Industry 4.0. Right? If they're left out of Industry 4.0, then they don't have economies in the future. As we move toward a dematerialized, decarbonized economy, they're not going to be able to participate. Right? So a lot of our focus with Smart Nations is entirely around how is it that we can help developing countries provide for clean, smart energy at scale, smart grid distribution at scale, blockchain at scale, edge to cloud data centers, and can we fund them and design them and build them? So Tim and I have talked specifically about Servodome, a very familiar with Serverdome. I've spent a lot of time with them over the last several years. It is one of the architectures that I would choose to use because when I'm as concerned about the carbon in operations from power use as I am embedded carbon in the facility. Right? So in the case of Serverdome, it's 100% recycled aluminum that is in the structure, and it can be recycled again, as an example. Right? So what we've been talking about is at the same time, so I've got two projects that I'm at letter of intent now in Africa, 2 different countries, 2 different academic institutions, where the idea is to place a small, high-performance computing supercomputer data center able to generate its own clean power completely off-grid. So $40, $50 million projects in each case. We not only want to develop the data center, in the case of one, it's for their science and technology innovation center of a brand name that everybody in the world knows, right? It's the Nelson Mandela Institute, Science and Technology. We are at a point now of an LOI to actually go out and raise funds for this. The back end of this is that I want to put in place an innovation lab for data centers inside each one of these structures that we do. There are potentially 3 with that institution, 2 with another university in Nairobi. The idea is that we actually do the training and certification of data center operators in Africa on the ground. And that's what we're working toward with this idea of a strategic alliance where we build on all of these. Everything that we do within Smart Nations has to meet the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. That's the benchmark. So it's taking this DC Pro white label training, labeling it again, and adding on a module around the SDGs, right? Particularly around those that are benchmarked to 2030, which is 0 carbon. So that's the nature of the strategic relationship that we want to strike. And that I want to put right into these letters of intent going to these institutions so that they know that. And that becomes part of their reason for wanting to work with the students.
So the new office for the vice chairman who will be graduating here with us is our global initiatives.
How did you get involved with global initiatives?
I've been working on the concept for this for about 3 years, 2 years in a more formal way. So it's just developed over time. Relationships, I've been operating just like Bruce on a global basis for a long time in the field. So it's not anybody always can't get to with about 2 degrees of separation.
Why Africa?
Only in this case, because I have a friend in Tanzania who is an AI developer, and he is on the advisory board for the Nelson Mandela Institute. So he wanted to be in by the hand. Wow.
Can you share a little bit about Andre?
Sure. So Andre Eisgren, who's my partner and the co-founder of Smart Nations, is a software developer focused entirely around developing platforms and applications for smart cities. And when you think of smart cities, really the connected social environment at any scale. Right? This is in our case, it's everything from small communities to nation states. That's why it's called Smart Nations. So his company is called IntraHouse. It's in Bodø, Norway. And we have formed our corporate headquarters for the foundation within the Nordic Innovation House in Palo Alto, which gives us the Nordics are far more advanced in their thinking about all of this than we are. It can be. So that's the reason I teamed with him. He and I started on this again about 3 years ago, and eventually it formalized, and we're right now in the very final strokes of all of the 501c3 requirements were formed. We're now in operation. So I do a little slide presentation tomorrow of about 8 minutes on smart nations, because that's as far as I thought about it, 8 minutes. 2 years, 8 minutes later.
Well, thank you. We've got one more gentleman that is an invited guest. I'm working with Bill Linton here, the executive roundtables. Some of the meetings that we had have been very powerful. So Bill, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit, and then we'll let Michelle chime in one more time before we adjourn here and transition to our graduation program.
Okay, so I will cover some of the things we've done together and give a little background on best practice sharing.
If you would.
So I'll start with that. Since 2014, and I've been in consulting longer than that, but I've been focused on doing best practice sharing. And I mentioned this in the introduction, but we've done about 7 programs, and we've done them in several places, mostly in the U.S., but we've done a couple overseas. Did one in Europe, in Munich, actually, this past September. But all of these involve visiting with companies because we want to have tours associated with this, and then we invite leaders from different functions inside large businesses to participate and to share among themselves on topics of mutual interest. Those topics are oftentimes things like engineering and how they're structured in engineering, or how they want to improve in that function. Sometimes it is on manufacturing topics, and I mentioned earlier digitalization is one of those. And so we had Siemens involved for several of our programs. They have a program, they have a platform called MindSphere. Some of you may have heard of MindSphere. It has to do with helping companies use big data, basically. In other words, lots of people will tell you we're now collecting through sensors, we're collecting all sorts of data about our operations, but we're not using it very much. So Siemens has been working to help solve that problem, along with lots of other people, of course, who do data mining and data analysis and these kinds of things. So digitalization has been an interesting topic for the past couple of years. Another topic has been sustainability, and I tie that with energy. Not just although we've had people like Procter & Gamble speak about what they're doing generally about sustainability, but my focus has been much more on energy management, and in some cases renewable energy, and the topics that companies really want to talk about in this area. And so that seems to fit well in your environment. The whole thing of course, renewable energy and the changing grid situation. There's many subtopics. Kurt Hurst has participated in his former role and was, I think, very much interested in and contributing to that topic because Edison Energy was focused on helping companies in their energy decisions. And I guess we won't go into much depth, or we would be here the rest of the afternoon with that. Dr. Tim and I went on a trip together to Charlotte recently. I'm also in South Carolina, not too far away, maybe 10 miles from you. Mm-hmm. And so we went on a trip to Charlotte, and we visited with Siemens, and we also visited Michelin. At Michelin, we met with the chief data officer, who gave us some really good insights about trends, changes from the perspective. He's the chief digital officer for Michelin Global. He has a background with Apple and with several other large, well-known tech companies. And is really into thinking about the future of digitalization, you know, all that it means. We talked to him about their data centers. We talked to him about, you know, what they're doing, their fear of the cloud, their CEO's fear of the cloud, topics like this. And you may contribute more than I'm doing on that subject, maybe offline here if you want to, or now if you want to. But
Yeah, I mean, he really resonates with what we've all been discussing is in terms of 4.0 and, you know, what that undertaking is. And to the point that he divulged was, you know, companies like Samsung are allocating 6,000 engineers and $500 million to try to make that an accomplishable objective for the organization. And so what we're doing to steer AATC and Joint Force Solutions to shore those issues up and be a catalyst for those organizations to teach what needs to be done, because they know they got to bring this back. They have their roundtables. They got to disseminate it to their organizations and elevate the thought process of, you know, these are actionable items, and how are we going to do it? We can't do it by ourselves. We need help. And I think that's what we kind of resonated on with that. So hopefully that not only from the global perspective that we're looking at, but that we can go shoulder to shoulder with some of that. So I'm looking forward to our subsequent meetings.
So just one other, to wrap it up, our conversation with Siemens. And Siemens is quite interested in technology development, and they're looking for partners who are focused in technology areas of their interest. And digital twinning was brought up here. That's one of the focus areas of 14 technologies that Siemens is most interested to develop. And they typically are doing it in a manufacturing environment, although there are some others that are not strictly manufacturing. And you know how broad the term digital twinning gets. It's more than, it's not just simulation, but it is simulation in the setting. And so I think that that has application. I think that there's some connectivity to what you said and what could come out of a relationship with this area of Siemens. Data science and those others have some connectivity as well.
And we had the wherewithal to do these meetings in the middle of tornadoes that were crashing down on us. Actually conducted some of them in their fallout hallway.
There were a few tornadoes around that day for making our trip. One final thing, though, is I was also working, because Siemens has an interest in hydrogen and the hydrogen economy. So having conversations with them and with some others like Savannah River National Labs about the future of the hydrogen economy. I've been doing more since we talked. But there's things going along in this area, and the possibility of backup power with data centers has come up as a topic. Not only, I mean, obviously backup power might be batteries, it might be any number of things, but the big issue when a disaster occurs is the concern about backup diesel power, because it's believed that diesel would, in an extended emergency, would just go away. It would all be funneled to the military or to some other use. And you know, hospitals are starting to transition to fuel cells, and I'm not sure if any of you have seen data centers, because it's not my strength to know what data centers are doing today, but I see it on lists where people are talking about the future of hydrogen going for these applications.
You mean hydrogen fuel cells?
In that case, hydrogen fuel cells. And if you want to bring up the other element of hydrogen, you may. I think I'll conclude because I don't want to take up more time.
Yeah, I think to keep us on time with what we're doing, I'll defer that to our next meeting. But it is centered around some great opportunities. I guess the other thing is to address that we are going to have a meeting later with the nuclear site here on Friday to discuss possibly these technologies and the use of hydrogen. So, you know, we'll be able to disseminate that with the team.
Palo Verde.
Palo Verde. Yeah. So exciting stuff. Appreciate all that you shared and what we're doing together. Michelle, are you still on the line?
I am.
So
I'm learning to talk.
are you exhausted yet? I know I am.
No, I'm even more, I think it's enthusiastic and intrigued on different things. There's so much subject matter expertise around that table there. And again, I can't wait to dig in and contribute in a way that I can. My highest and best use, I'm a pretty straight talker, even though I'm from the Midwest. My highest and best use is in marketing, sales, and monetization. So that is what I hope to bring to the table. I have deep subject matter expertise, teach continuing legal ed, now internationally on my niche area of concentration. But lean on me for anything regarding branding, website. If anybody has any interest in themselves protecting against my area, which is a very litigious one, please reach out, and I look forward, as I said, to meeting all of you soon and working with you. Thank you, Tim, for including me in.
Absolutely. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I am very esteemed to have the honor of all of you participate in this endeavor. And so my hat is off to you. And the complexion of our board is more leaning toward adding more very skilled, very highly trained women. I think it conveys the right message in the industry. We want to attract young professionals, young women to get into this line of work. We talk about millennials, but there's two genders there, or according to Dr. Carey, there's 56 genders, but we won't go into that. But
How many?
56.
Wow.
Yes. But anyway,
got
so
some research
Dr. Carey Getz is also on our board. She had another commitment, so she'll be anxiously awaiting the meeting minutes for that, and we will reconvene with her on the next meeting. And then there is a personal family issue going on with Caroline, so she regrets not being able to attend as well. And then we've had some discussions with Sharon Hubert, who is the CEO of Opus International, and she's got a campus in California, in the DC Dulles area with Iron Mountain, and then she's up in Hillsboro, Oregon. So we're hoping we met through the cap rate, and so we're looking maybe to have her fill another role in our board. And then we've got Diane, of course, who's been putting up with me for all these years. We're trying to get this thing off the ground.
How did she do it?
I don't know, but all I can say is that I didn't have any gray hair until I met you guys and started talking about this stuff. But thank you all. I think what I'd like to do is ask if there are any open items that we want to address to put on the docket for the minutes. And if there's not, then we can adjourn this portion of our meeting. And so the floor is everyone's. I'll take that as we're concluding business. So
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
motion carried. No, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carried. We are going to have some refreshments, take a little break, and we'll come back here. Dennis, I need you to stay in the room for a little bit because you got some signatures to do with me.
Right.
And then if you guys want to come back here in about half an hour or sooner, it's up to you. We're
Cheers,
graduating.
everyone.